Well, kids, it's story time. And I'm not even going to tell you the story. I'm going to read you a story. So just let it wash over you. Sit back and relax. A war had broken out, and the people all left the village where they were. They took everything from sewing machines to blankets to teapots they would never use. The roads were packed with those leaving, carrying what they had. The roads were littered with parts of what they left behind, dolls and old suitcases and broken baskets. One woman carried a large bundle on her back, and when asked if she needed help or what was in it, she muttered names. She was a solitary figure in a sea of refugees heading to the borders looking for peace. Weeks of traveling went by, and the woman had passed through borders, over rivers and seas, and she landed in a refugee camp where, in a tent with 10 other women, she finally had a place of her own. But she kept to herself. She was the only woman in the camp who carried her bundle on every chore, to every meal, to any line for food or clothing. When they asked why, she muttered names. One day a child came to her and asked for a thread to stitch up a sock, and like most people, she asked the woman about the bundle she carried around. The child, in all her innocence, looked into the woman's tired eyes and said, "I'm your friend. What is it I can carry for you?" The woman looked up as if for the first time since the war began, since all the homes had been destroyed, and since she had walked 5 weeks in troubled shoes over crossed rivers, seas. She saw for the first time the child before her, smiling, innocent, saying, "I'm your friend. What can I carry for you?" And something cracked in the woman, and her tears became sobs, and sobs became heaves, and heaves became silence. And the girl stood holding her hand the whole time. Then the woman took the bundle and opened it. Layers of cloth were unfurled. Each layer showed a small dress, a shirt with opal buttons, stockings blue and pink, a small hat with a golden rooster on it. Each piece of clothing, child size, had a picture pinned to it of a child smiling, wearing those same clothes. The young girl watched as the woman peeled back layer after layer as she said the names of her children. The woman and the girl became friends. They started by taking the clothes one by one to tents and finding children who needed them. And for each child who received a jacket or stockings, the woman spoke the name and unpinned the picture and blessed the child with the gift. When all the clothes were gone, the girl stood by the woman wearing a hat with a golden rooster on it. And they looked at a wall of photos over the woman's bed, and many stories were told, and laughter returned to the woman's heart, and the girl with the rooster on her hat had indeed become her friend. And it turned out that the girl had also lost her parents in the war. So when the refugees were shipped to other lands, the woman and the girl stepped onto a boat for Canada. One held a stack of photos, and the other a hat with a golden rooster. And each felt the joy of new horizons ahead and burdens left behind. I don't know if this story is true because it came to me like a waking dream this week. As I watched thousands of refugees flood through Europe, I imagine some of them have good endings like this, but I imagine some of them, many, will not. But beyond the current events of the day, the story came to me knowing that it may also be about my children becoming teenagers, about the burdens I carry in parenting and otherwise. Because today I want to talk to you about burdens. I want to say to you as your minister that not too many of us are very good at laying our burdens down. My schedule and the schedule of the ministers here in the pastoral care department goes weeks without hearing your stories, without hearing the burdens you carry, the holy and unholy messes, the lost pieces of your heart, the transgressions, the haunting troubles that you carry around in your life. You and I carry around burdens like a woman in war carrying the bundle of her lost children's clothes. And for some reason, we don't speak of it. And for some reason, I find myself preaching a lot about this lately. So I started thinking I had to unburden myself. I thought maybe I'm not praying enough. Maybe I'm not loving myself enough. Maybe I'm not enough. And that's a dangerous trap. I don't want you to make that mistake or hear that that's what I'm saying to you. I believe that we are always enough. And that is why we are talking today. That is why I believe that we have the need most days to share our burdens that weigh us down. That is why I believe that when we do unburden ourselves, when we lay burdens down like the old song says, we learn war no more. I was listening to that song and I thought, that's a strange connection. To lay your burdens down means to not learn war. How is unburdening oneself not learning war? It implies that the more burdens we carry, the more combative we will be, the more fearful we will be. The refrain, "Ain't gonna study war no more," is a reference to a quotation in Isaiah chapter 2, verse 4, and Micah chapter 4, verse 3. Follow that in your Bibles once again. "Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." These lines point to a hope that is as old as nation states. A hope that somehow human beings will overcome the need to rage against each other, to create enemies, to draw up battle lines and give voice to things better left unsaid. A hope that we will get beyond calling those people the problem. And I'm not going to get into it, but watching what's happening in the election, I worry for us all. Lines being drawn. Micah and Isaiah and people for all time hoped for restoration, for freedom from the warring soul, for release. The words, "Gonna lay my burden down," were first spoken through mouths of slaves in our country brought here, you know the story, who sang off the casting of negativity. They tried to cast off aggression, putting on a spiritual garb. They called it standing at the side of the river. "Gonna lay my burden down, down by the riverside. Gonna lay my burden down, down by the riverside. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Gonna lay down my sword and shield. Gonna stick my sword in the golden sand. Gonna try on my long white robe. Gonna put on my golden shoes. Gonna talk with the Prince of Peace. Gonna shake hands all around the world. Gonna cross the River Jordan. Gonna climb up that mountain. Gonna climb the road to heaven." Of course, the river crossing to them symbolized both freedom, crossing to the north side of the Ohio, a wide and dangerous passing. But the goal was leaving behind the brutality none of us will ever know, to a heaven of sorts. And it all starts with laying our burdens down. The freedom on the other side of the river, the not studying war no more, the leaving behind of fear and aggression. Now let me go back to something I said earlier. I think we aren't very good at putting our burdens down. I hear you say to me all the time, I don't want to burden you with this, or I'll be fine. Both code words for I can't speak of it, I can't put it down. And I'm not talking about confession, which can be different than unburdening. Of course, we don't have any official confessional booth here. Confession is admitting sin. Unburdening is speaking your truth. Confession comes with 3 Hail Marys and whatever else. I don't know. I didn't grow up Catholic. Speaking truth opens doors, unfolds the burdens of our lives. And I'm not talking strictly of just putting things down like we do at the beginning of each year when we burn the year before. That is relinquishment. I'm talking about holding out before us a truth that we are carrying and asking another to carry it with us. Like a girl in a refugee camp when she holds photos or dresses that are passed of a new friend whose children have died. To unburden is ultimately to love ourselves. I said to a woman at the abortion clinic where I volunteer and do chaplaincy, who told me of the shame she felt of going through this, I said, you know that old saying, to love your neighbor as yourself? She said, yeah. I said, what if we turn that around and said, we need to love ourselves as we love our neighbor? Love yourself as your neighbor means love yourself not in some egocentric way, not some self-serving sense, but to love yourself the way you would love your friend, in the sense of taking care of yourself, nourishing yourself, trying to understand yourself, trying to comfort yourself, trying to strengthen yourself. One way we do this is knowing that we deserve love from others and ourselves. Now, today I could have preached on prayer. Boring. I will say this. Henry Nouwen, the aforementioned gay Dutch Catholic priest that I spoke of a couple weeks ago, said praying is no easy matter. It demands a relationship in which you allow someone other than yourself to enter into the very center of your person, to see there what you would rather leave in darkness, and to touch there what you would rather leave untouched. Each time, he says, each time you dare to let go and to surrender one of those fears, your hands open a little and your palms spread out in a gesture of receiving. There are a lot of prayers being spoken when we counsel women in the clinic, because we are privileged to both open our hearts to them and they open their hearts to us, to share the burden. So a way to practice unburdening is to pray, and I know many of us only pray when we come here on Sunday morning, and that's okay. Another way is, as Buechner says, to speak to yourself. To remind yourself what matters, to remind yourself who matters, to remind yourself what is happening in your life, to speak to yourself. And yet another way is to carry another's prayer. Now, each year in church we do a little ritual where we write the burdens that we are carrying and redistribute them to others. And at the end of that day in church, many are left behind, and so I don't know why, but I pick them up and carry them all year. And here are a few from last year. Prayers. I hope to be a better mom, that my kids adjust to our new normal, a recent divorce. Pray for my ability to love my husband, with a whole free self for who he is. Pray for my mother and her siblings and friendships. There is much hurt and anger and sadness. Pray for me and my friends and others suffering from depression. One way I practice carrying burdens is to pray on these every day. So I want to encourage you now to think about what you're carrying, what you want someone to share, what prayers you would hope for to be carried in this place by the people around you. And so that it is not so much confessional, but love. I want to encourage you to look at that paper that an usher gave you as you came in. And if they didn't and you need a piece of paper, just raise your hand and they will come in and give you one. On that paper, I'm inviting you now to write something you are carrying, that burden you hope someone else will carry for you. And what we will do is pass them to the ends of the rows afterward and recollect them and then redistribute them, so as you leave, you can take one of these. And people tell me all the time they have these in their wallets and on their mirrors and in their homes. You will carry someone else's burden if you take the challenge. You will be asked to pray for that person, to speak the words you read, to ponder them for the good of us all. And if you're doing this at home, feel free to mail them in to me. I will hold your burdens and pray for you. So friends, let us ponder that paper. If you will, consider what prayers you need. I encourage you to pass those to the ends, and as you leave today, take one, ponder it, pray over it, and share those burdens with us, this community. I see some people writing, ask a Unitarian to write down a burden and get a book. Please just... It is a blessing to hold each other. That's what this church is about. If we can't do this here, where can we do this? Will you join us now and sing a song that you know? And Don's going to call out the verses.